Chapter 1. The Forgotten Pact. The council chamber was silent, not the kind of silence that came from respect or contemplation. This was the silence of predators watching their prey. Ambassador Elias Carter stood in the center of the vast, circular hall, surrounded by representatives of the Galactic Accord, a coalition of over 100 advanced civilizations. Some had evolved in oceans, others in gas giants, and a few in the endless void itself. They were ancient, powerful, and united, and none of them wanted humanity here. Elias had been here before. Countless times over the decades, humans had petitioned for entry into the Accord, and every time they had been denied. Too warlike, too primitive, too unpredictable. But today was different, because today, the Accord had summoned him. High Chancellor Vaynok, a towering insectoid being with crystalline mandibles, finally broke the silence. "The Ashen Accord is at risk," she said, her voice sharp and grating. "The terms must be re-evaluated." A murmur passed through the chamber. Elias didn't react, but inside, his mind was racing. The Ashen Accord. A relic of a time no one spoke of. It was signed over 300 years ago, long before humanity had even left its own solar system. It was the only reason Earth still existed. But no one, not even humans themselves, knew why. It had always been a mystery. The few records that remained never stated what the agreement actually was, only that it existed, and that it prevented the destruction of humanity. And now, after centuries, they wanted to re-evaluate it, which meant one thing: humanity was in danger. Elias took a slow breath, keeping his voice steady. "High Chancellor, the Ashen Accord has maintained stability for centuries. Why is it being questioned now?" Vaynok's eyes flickered, a predator studying its prey. "Because the ones who signed it are gone." Elias's blood ran cold. Gone? The ones who signed it, whoever or whatever they were, had been the only thing keeping humanity safe. And now, they were no longer here, which meant the rest of the galaxy was free to do whatever they wanted. The murmurs grew louder. Some species clicked their mandibles in excitement. Others flexed their wings or tightened their coils. The air smelled of anticipation. Elias clenched his jaw. For 300 years, humanity had been tolerated, not because they were weak, but because something had forced the Accord to tolerate them. But now, with the Accord's enforcers gone, every species in this room was wondering the same thing. What was stopping them from finishing what had been started centuries ago? "Human," Vaynok said, leaning forward. "We do not wish for conflict. But your people were never meant to exist. The Accord must correct its mistakes." Silence. Elias didn't blink, didn't move. Then, slowly, he smiled. Because they had just revealed something they never meant to. They feared humanity, and that meant there was something about humans, something buried in the past, that even the greatest empires of the galaxy did not want to face. It was time to find out what. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. Elias Carter didn't return to Earth. He couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he found himself staring at an ancient sealed archive deep within Accord Prime, the political heart of the Galactic Accord. This was where history was buried, where inconvenient truths were locked away. He wasn't supposed to be here, but humanity had been sentenced to erasure, and he wasn't going to let that happen without knowing why. The air in the archive was heavy, as if the weight of forgotten centuries pressed against his chest. The room was vast, lined with crystalline storage units, each containing records of civilizations that predated humanity by millennia. A rogue AI back on Earth had once hacked into fragments of these records. It found references to a war that had been erased from all human history, a war fought against humanity, but the details were missing, intentionally hidden. And now, as Elias scanned the glowing interface in front of him, he saw it. Ashen Accord Treaty, year 7245 GC. He exhaled slowly. That was 300 years ago, and it was time to find out what happened. The file unlocked. Elias expected documents, diplomatic exchanges, maybe some ancient battle reports. Instead, a holographic recording. Flickered to life, the chamber dimmed. The archive's security systems pulsed, reacting to something that hadn't been accessed in centuries. Then, a face appeared. Not human. A towering, ashen-skinned alien with burning silver eyes stared back at him. Its presence was commanding, almost unnatural, and then it spoke. "This is the last record of the First War." Elias felt his breath hitch. The First War. There had never been a First War in recorded history. We are the remnants of the Haran Dominion. We led the Accord against the humans. We lost. Elias's blood ran cold. The humans were never meant to survive. The recording shifted. Images flashed. Planetary bombardments, shattered moons, entire fleets burning. But these weren't human worlds. They were Accord worlds. And then, humans. Not cowering, not hiding, not pleading, fighting, with weapons that should not have existed. With strategies that should have been impossible. With something the Haran Dominion feared more than death itself. We underestimated them. We thought them primitive, thought their violence was a weakness. But it was not violence. It was something worse. It was defiance. The recording flickered. The ashen-skinned figure leaned forward. "If you are watching this, the Accord has begun to fracture. Know this. We signed the Ashen Accord not to protect humanity, but to protect the galaxy from them." The recording cut to black. The archive fell silent. Elias took a step back, his mind reeling. For centuries, humanity had believed itself the underdog, the outcast, the weakest link in the Galactic Order. But that wasn't why they had been isolated. They had been contained. The Ashen Accord wasn't a peace treaty, it was a cage. And now, the cage had been opened. Chapter 3. The cage breaks Elias. Carter had always known that the galaxy viewed humanity as lesser, but he had never realized they were feared. The recording's words echoed in his mind. "We signed the Ashen Accord not to protect humanity, but to protect the galaxy from them." He stood in the dimly lit archive, staring at the flickering remains of the message. The First War. Humanity had fought against the Accord and won. But how? Humanity had barely left its own solar system when the Accord was formed. What did they do that terrified the galaxy enough to seal them away for 3 centuries? And now, with the treaty collapsing, what would the Accord do to prevent history from repeating itself? The answer came faster than he expected. The doors to the archive slammed open. Armed guards poured into the chamber, their weapons glowing with the unmistakable energy of containment fields. "Human. Step away from the terminal." Elias exhaled. Of course, he had seen something he wasn't supposed to, which meant they couldn't let him leave. He raised his hands, stepping away from the console. "I don't suppose we can talk about this?" The lead guard, a towering reptilian enforcer, bared its teeth. "You have violated high-security protocols. You will be detained until further notice." Elias's eyes flicked to the hallway behind them. Too many guards. No escape, but they had already made a mistake. They assumed a human in a locked room was contained. The first guard stepped forward. Elias moved faster. A sharp twist. A pivot. He was inside the guard's reach before it could react. His elbow cracked against its throat, sending it sprawling. The containment rifle clattered to the ground. He was already moving, rolling, grabbing, twisting, his instincts taking over before he had time to think. 3 seconds later, 2 more guards were unconscious, and Elias held a containment rifle in his hands. The last 2 officers hesitated. They had never seen a human move like that. Elias adjusted his grip. "Still want to talk?" They did not. 15 minutes later, Elias was sprinting through the underbelly of Accord Prime. He had a head start, but it wouldn't last. Once the Accord realized what he had uncovered, every fleet in the galaxy would be coming for him. But now, he knew something they didn't. The Accord thought they were still containing humanity. They didn't realize the cage had already been broken. Somewhere out there, buried in the forgotten edges of space, lay the truth, and Elias was going to find it. Chapter 4. The silent battlefield. Elias Carter's ship tore through the void, leaving Accord Prime far behind. He had no home to return to. Earth was no longer safe. The moment he escaped the archives, he became the most hunted man in the galaxy. Every major faction of the Accord would be watching, tracking, waiting for the moment to erase him, and the truth he carried. But they had underestimated him, because Elias wasn't running. He was chasing something. The archive had contained more than just the recording of the First War. It had also held coordinates, a dead system, far beyond Accord space, a place no official records mentioned, no trade routes crossed, a place wiped from every star map. And yet something had happened there, something so terrible that it had sealed humanity's fate for the next 3 centuries. Whatever it was, Elias needed to see it for himself. The system had no name. As his ship dropped out of FTL, a dead sun loomed ahead, its light long since extinguished. But it wasn't the dead star that made Elias's breath catch. It was what surrounded it. A graveyard. Hundreds, thousands of ships drifted in eternal silence, warships from every Accord species, shattered and lifeless. Some were ancient, their hulls scarred with the passage of time. Others looked like they had been destroyed only recently. But the most terrifying part? Not a single human ship among them, and yet humanity had won. Elias guided his ship carefully through the wreckage, scanning for anything that could tell him what had happened here. The Accord had fought a war against humanity, a war they lost, but there was no sign of a human fleet, no remains of Earth's supposed armada. So how? How had they done it? And why? Was the Accord so desperate to keep it buried? His ship's scanner blinked. A signal, a single distress beacon, still active, still transmitting. Elias's pulse quickened. Someone, something, was still here. The beacon led him to the largest wreck in the field, a colossal battleship, far older than anything Elias had ever seen. Its hull was covered in deep gashes, not from weapons, but from something else. Something that had torn through it like paper. As he docked, he felt it. A presence. The silence was wrong, not empty, waiting. Something in this graveyard was still alive. Elias stepped into the ruined corridors. The ship creaked with the weight of time, its artificial gravity barely holding. The distress beacon pulsed deeper inside. As he followed it, the walls around him became stranger. Signs of battle. Yes, blaster fire, melted steel, but also claw marks. Deep, jagged, inhuman. Something had boarded this ship. Something had torn through the Accord's strongest defenses, and for the first time, Elias began to wonder. Was it even human that they feared? The beacon was close. A final door stood before him, rusted and frozen in time. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, and the voice in the dark greeted him. "You're late." Chapter 5. The Last Witness. The voice sent a chill down Elias's spine. "You're late." The room was dim, lit only by the flickering glow of the failing distress beacon. The air was stale, heavy with the weight of centuries, and in the center of the chamber, a figure sat slumped against the wall. At first, Elias thought it was a corpse. The man's suit was torn, his helmet cracked. But as he stepped closer, the figure breathed, barely. Elias's heart pounded. There shouldn't have been anyone left alive here. The man lifted his head, his eyes, pale, unfocused, fixed on Elias. "How long?" His voice was raw, broken. Elias swallowed. 300 years. A long silence. Then, the man exhaled, a sound more like a laugh than relief. "They really locked it away, didn't they?" Elias crouched down. "Who are you?" The man's lips cracked into a faint, almost amused smile. "Name's Vance, captain of the Black Dagger. And as far as I can tell, the last survivor of the First War." Elias's blood ran cold. This was impossible. A human. Alive. For 3 centuries, he had to be some kind of clone, or a simulation, or, "You're wondering how I'm still alive." Vance chuckled weakly. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Elias tightened his grip on his sidearm. "Try me." The man's eyes darkened. "All right, kid. Let me tell you what really happened." The truth was worse than Elias could have imagined. The Accord had always framed the First War as humanity's last stand. A desperate resistance against overwhelming force. That was a lie. Humanity had never been losing. From the very first engagement, they had been winning. The Accord thought they understood war. Vance's voice was hoarse, but steady. They thought numbers and technology made them superior. They thought strategy was just a game. Then they fought us. And they learned what happens when you push humans to the edge. Elias listened in stunned silence as Vance described the impossible. The Accord outnumbered humanity 50-1. They had superior weapons, fleets that could blot out the stars. They should have wiped humanity out in days. But the war dragged on. Days turned to months, months turned to years, and in every battle humans got worse, not weaker, darker. "The thing is, kid," Vance's voice lowered, "humans don't fight wars to win. We fight wars to end them. We don't stop. We don't break. We don't surrender. We burn everything until there's nothing left." Elias' breath caught as Vance described the final battle. Not a battle, a slaughter. By the time the Accord realized they couldn't win, they weren't fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting to contain humanity. They begged for peace. Vance's expression was unreadable, not because we forced them to, because they were afraid of what we were becoming. The Ashen Accord was not a peace treaty. It was a cage. The Accord had sealed humanity away to protect itself. Because if the war had continued, if they had pushed humanity even a little further, there wouldn't have been a galaxy left to fight for. Elias felt his pulse pounding in his skull. Everything he thought he knew, everything humanity believed about itself, was a lie. So here's the big question. Kid, Vance exhaled slowly. Now that the cage is breaking, what do you think happens next? Chapter 6. The Unleashed Elias. Carter had spent his life believing that humanity was an underdog in the Galactic Order. Now, as he stood in the ruins of a battlefield forgotten by history, staring at the last survivor of the First War, he understood the truth. Humanity had never been weak. It had been contained. "So," Vance said, his voice barely more than a whisper, "what happens now?" Elias clenched his fists. The Accord had broken the treaty. They had already decided. The cage was open, and the galaxy was not ready for what was coming. Vance coughed, his body barely holding on. Elias could see the exhaustion behind his eyes. Not just physical, but something deeper. "I fought to keep them locked away, kid," he muttered. "But the Accord? They were fools to think they could keep us buried forever." Elias knelt beside him. "What do I do?" The old soldier gave a tired smile. "That depends," he exhaled. "Do you still think we're the good guys?" Elias didn't answer, because for the first time he wasn't sure. His communicator flared to life, a single incoming message. Earth's emergency signal. The Accord had made their move. They weren't going to wait. Humanity wasn't being judged. It was being erased. Elias took one last look at the battlefield around him. The wreckage of thousands of ships, the ghosts of a war that had been covered up for centuries. And then, he understood. This war had never ended. It had just been paused, and now it was time to finish it. Elias activated his ship's beacon. A signal, broadcasting across every human colony, every hidden outpost. The Ashen Accord was broken, the cage was gone, and humanity was awake.